It's been a few days since I officially notified my soon-to-be ex-wife of 29 years that our 7-year marriage is over. Since then, I have been bombarded with requests and demands to talk to her from those around me. I made the decision not to engage after formally notifying my wife. I stubbornly avoid meeting and talking to her, and everyone piles on me 247 with messages and calls asking me to contact her. It's annoying. How can I explain to these people, who are my friends and family members, who I want to keep in touch with after the divorce, without seeming rude, that I don't need to be pressured? Here's some background. We began dating when we were both 21 years old and decided to get married when she became pregnant with our son. Our marriage was strong, and over the years we welcomed another child, our daughter, 2 years after our son. Throughout our marriage, we enjoyed a wonderful intimacy, open communication, and maintained healthy financial stability. We were homeowners, proud parents of beautiful children, and we had a cat. Our lives seemed harmonious, and I thought we were happy. However, everything changed about 3 months ago when my wife, whom we'll call Evelyn, came home from work seething with excitement about her new manager. She was telling a new colleague, whom we will call Greg. Immediately, I felt uneasy, as if something was amiss. However, I did not let on and asked about Greg, his marital status, whether he had children, where he lived, etc. She informed me that Greg is married and has 3 children. At this point, I began to suspect that her infatuation with him might be a crush. I've dealt with such infatuations before, and they usually pass with time. So I decided to wait to see if this new interest would likely fade within a week. But that didn't happen, which added to my growing anxiety. In the end, I decided that I needed to see if there was something more to it. And to do so, I contacted Evelyn and explained that I had received a report of a virus on our home network and stated that I needed to update the antivirus software on her tablet, cell phone, and laptop. Evelyn had no skills whatsoever. She handed me her devices, and I installed remote monitoring and keystroke logging software from the most reputable internet service I could find. It turned out to be the best $22 a month subscription I had ever invested in. Better a few days later, I observed the first exchange of text messages between them. Initially, the conversations were relatively innocuous, primarily revolving around work-related matters. However, over the course of the next few weeks, the frequency of their communication increased, and the content gradually grew more personal. I initiated a subtle confrontation with my wife. My teams. One evening when she came home from work, I gave her a penetrating stare. She asked, "What's the matter? You seem to have done something bad and you're trying to hide it." "No, you didn't." "What are you saying? Are you hiding something from me? Is there something you need to share?" "No, I just had a hard day at work," and so on. Over the next few days, their messaging activity decreased, but they soon resumed their intense communication. Their messages began to take on a flirtatious tone. I attempted another gentle confrontation with her, and once more she looked me in the eye and lied to my face. As to around the 3-month mark, I realized that I needed to prepare for the worst. I recognized the need to emotionally prepare myself for what lay ahead. As time went on, their communication continued, gradually growing into a full-blown emotional affair that became more intimate with each passing day. I confronted my wife on multiple occasions, although I refrained from presenting any concrete evidence. She consistently denied any wrongdoing, and I chose not to pressure her into ceasing her actions. After all, she was an adult capable of making her own decisions. Despite my persistent inquiries, she continued to lie to my face again and again. There seemed to be a huge gulf between us, and our intimacy came to naught. At the same time, I noticed that I was becoming emotionally distant from my marriage, and this mirrored their communication. This realization lodged itself in my soul, and I immersed myself in intense training, mentally preparing myself for the fact that divorce was the most likely outcome in this situation. I took the step of retaining a lawyer, meticulously preparing all the necessary paperwork, and even arranged for someone to be on standby to serve her with divorce papers when I deemed it necessary. Then, when I stumbled upon the first messages outlining their plan to meet up, a surprising sense of relief washed over me, as it provided the clarity I needed to finally make the decision to end our marriage. Watching this disastrous situation unfold is truly agonizing. I rented a room on the same floor on the very day they were scheduled to meet, and prepared my assistant to serve her at the hotel. On the day of the divorce, she makes up a story and informs me that she has to work overtime. I arrive at the hotel and wait patiently for her to arrive. She's accompanied by the person I hired. We enter the elevator about 15 minutes after her. We go up to the floor. It turns out that a key card is required to enter the elevator, which is why I got a room on the same floor. As we approach the door, I can hear faint sounds of activity inside, indicating they're already engaged in something. I discreetly position myself around the corner while my assistant loudly knocks on the door. "Greg, it's the serving guy. I have an urgent delivery." It's an urgent delivery for Evelyn. Serving guy: "Mom, I've just been informed that it's of utmost urgency. It must be delivered to you immediately." After a couple of minutes, the wife finally opens the door in her robe. Serving guy: "Evelyn's wife." "Yes." She accepts the envelope and I go out to sign the necessary form. As my wife looks at me, her complexion visibly pales. I sign the necessary paperwork, then walk over to her. She freezes in place with a perplexed expression on her face, as if trying to comprehend what she is seeing. I've been preparing for this moment. Looking into the room, I called out to him. That's me. "Hey, Greg, come on out. I know perfectly well you're in there." He cautiously peeks around the corner, his fear obvious. I continue. "Wait, did you like my wife, Greg? Richard, are you turned on by your own spouse's deception? Greg, is that cheating? What drives you?" Greg is silent, unable to answer anything. Shifting my attention to my wife, I speak in a sarcastic tone. "You didn't believe you were the only woman this guy had, did you? But honestly, I just made that up to ruin their relationship." Then I say to Evelyn, my now ex-wife, "Listen, Evelyn, you're officially single now. Like you're single now, and you can do whatever you want. And now you can go back to your room. With those words, I walk away. Tears came to my eyes, but I didn't let them see my weakness. Instead, I hurried down the stairs, deciding not to wait for the elevator. As I descended the stairs, my wife's piercing scream echoed down the hallway, unlike anything I'd ever heard from her before. That scream strangely brought me some comfort. For the past few days, I spent hours in my car, letting the tears flow freely. Now I've mostly come to terms with it all. In fact, I'm relieved it's finally over and I can move forward. It's a sense of liberation, really. I've informed the kids that they'll be staying with my parents for the time being. I've even begun to engage in some light flirting with a colleague at work, and I've ventured onto Tinder. I'm having conversations with a few women, and it's providing a much-needed boost to my self-esteem. I'm not actively seeking anything physical or serious. It's more about enjoying the moment. I doubt I'll ever trust someone enough to enter into a long-term relationship again. So I haven't communicated with my wife since she flooded me with messages, all of which I've chosen to ignore. But everyone is trying to get me to talk to her. I'm contemplating whether or not I should inform Greg's wife of everything. If I were in her shoes, I would want to know the truth, and I doubt Greg would suddenly find the courage to come clean. So I've made the decision to put his wife on notice. I have already contacted her and given her the basic details. She was skeptical at first, so we agreed to meet at a nearby cafe within the hour. I've started asking those who contact me to ask her why I'm not contacting her, and that seems to have reduced the number of calls significantly. First update, all that was left was a handful of persistent people trying to pressure me. Interestingly, the most effective approach was to ask her directly why we were not communicating. Not to the pressure from others to get in touch only adds to my stress. Let me make some clarifications. But to many, it seemed like I was in complete control and flawlessly managing the situation throughout the day. However, with the exception of those 5 minutes in the hotel when I confronted her, I was in complete frustration. It took me a month and a half of mental preparation to muster the courage necessary for that brief 5-minute confrontation. I hoped she would turn around at the door and come back, even though she had plenty of opportunities to stop, but she didn't. I guess I held on to that hope until the last moment, believing that she might change her mind. I was willing to discuss reconciliation right up to the point where the situation escalated to physical contact. I had to gather all my strength to hold back my tears while I was in the hotel. To be honest, the tears started flowing even before I reached the end of the corridor. I want to clarify that my actions were not motivated by a desire for revenge. On the contrary, I took this step to free myself from the situation and regain my self-esteem. Being deceived is an incredibly humiliating, degrading, and emasculating experience. The fact that I asked Greg a question and surprised my wife was dictated by my own needs. It was my way of regaining control of my life, though I realized that my strength may not be enough to maintain it. I have decided to show her no more kindness or consideration towards her. In the meantime, I will devote my efforts to myself and my life. Yesterday, I had a meeting with Greg's wife. We had a long conversation at the cafe where we originally met. Our conversation made a strong impression on her. She finally made the courageous decision to call Greg when I was near her and visible on the screen. He begged and begged for forgiveness. She could not contain her emotions and cut off the conversation with him. In the end, she decided to stay the night at my new apartment, taking advantage of the spare room. It was too hard for her to go home and confront him. Throughout the night, we had a heartwarming conversation that allowed me to share my emotions with someone who truly understood what betrayal was. Last night, I heard her sobbing, and it was truly heartbreaking. I had the urge to comfort her and hug her, but I was afraid she would be embarrassed, or it would create an awkward situation. Today, I would ask her if there is anything I could do to help her during this difficult time. I assured her that she could stay with me for as long as she needs to. She can stay with me as long as she needs. The existence of the apartment remains a mystery known only to me. Although it is modest and sparsely furnished, it has enough food and all the necessary amenities. She's cleaning herself up for her meeting with Greg. He keeps bombarding her phone with messages and apologies. When I left for work this morning, she had not yet responded to any of Greg's messages. Second update. On a brighter note, Greg's wife is showing significant improvement. We now share hugs when we console each other, and there's no romantic attraction between us whatsoever. Please refrain from suggesting anything otherwise. But to be candid, having the support of someone going through a similar situation is incredibly valuable, particularly during those moments when the weight of it all becomes too much to bear. My wife has been the one person I've confided in since my childhood, while Greg's wife is only the second individual I've opened up to. Trusting people has always been a challenge for me, and it's become even more difficult as I've grown older. However, I somehow managed to build a sense of comfort and trust with Greg's wife. We've done a lot of sitting in our apartment, working hard and talking. Today, I accompanied Greg's wife to his apartment. His behavior, however, was quite expected. But to put it mildly, Greg's actions and character leave much to be desired. I remained silent throughout the meeting, offering my presence solely for emotional support to my newfound friend. He was in a state of desperation, willing to make any promise and do anything to persuade her to return home. He poured out all the details and held nothing back. Turns out my suspicions that the wife wasn't the only one involved were correct. He's had 3 mistresses in the last 10 months, 2 before that, with the first one coming just 2 months after they were married. He attributes this behavior to intimacy addiction. It's puzzling. If he has issues, why didn't he tell before marriage? Or why did he decide to get married in the first place? This man strikes me as the weakest and most morally questionable person I've ever encountered. However, it is possible that my judgment is influenced by my own perspective. Actually, PW18, I was apprehensive that I might lose my temper when we were scheduled to meet, but upon seeing him in person, I couldn't help but feel pity for him. Instead of viewing him as a genuine man, I saw him as a distorted and feeble imitation of one. This realization was unexpectedly freeing. He essentially refused to take any responsibility, absolving himself of blame entirely. His narrative made it look like it was someone else's fault. What was it, Greg? He even tried to blame it on his wife. At one point, I couldn't help but laugh, and it instantly silenced him. His third update. I'm sorry to report that this update is less than cheery. The ideas and support received over the past few days had lifted my spirits considerably, and I was on a positive wave. However, the fall has been quite painful. Greg's wife in particular has been hit pretty hard by all of this. It all started 5 hours after the confrontation with Greg last night. None of us got any sleep. A few hours ago, a doctor came to see her because she was having severe panic attacks. She was having trouble breathing and was having severe spasms when she was lying on the floor. She's been taken to the hospital. Greg is designated as her emergency contact person. I had to inform him not to come to the hospital if he got a call. It was the last request she made to me before she was taken away. I wasn't sure how to handle him in this situation, but I basically just threatened him. Update. I've been practically sleepless for a few days now, although the exact time frame is a bit hazy right now. During this time, I've mostly been with my dad, and I also made a visit to the hospital to see Greg's wife. She'll be staying at the hospital for some time. She's really having a tough time coming to grips with her situation. I did my best to offer support. Update. There have been some recent developments over the weekend, and it seems that Greg has disappeared. He's emptied their shared accounts and is currently untraceable. We've reached out to the bank in an attempt to reverse the transactions, but unfortunately they cannot do so as the funds have already been transferred to another bank. Given their marital status, it seems that their options are limited. Most likely, only Greg has access to the new account, and the new bank is not disclosing any information, possibly due to legal restrictions. Nevertheless, they have provided some guidance on obtaining injunction. I think that's what it's called, but getting a restraining order will take some time. The disappearance came to light on Sunday night when he was supposed to pick up his children from his ex-wife, according to one of his friends. I've never liked him, but his actions are undeniably cowardly. It's hard to find the words to describe it. He basically robbed his own family. What is going on in that guy's head anyway? Greg's wife is starting a lawsuit today, and she's using my attorney who already has all the information she needs from me. It's a practical move that saves both time and money. In fact, he can repeat my case for her. I sincerely sympathize with her. She's taking care of Greg's kids, and it's likely that she will lose contact with them, especially since she and Greg's ex-wife don't have a very good relationship. My father supported me constantly and never left me. I also visited Greg's wife often and spent a lot of time talking to her on the phone. We became each other's emotional support and confidence during this difficult time. Her devastation is palpable, and her children are currently with her parents. She will most likely be released from the hospital this week. Both my dad and I have extended our offer to provide financial assistance if she requires it. Her employer has also been incredibly understanding and supportive. Normally, she could manage to support herself and the kids, but their financial security has been shattered in this situation. My wife and I are moving toward divorce, so it is imperative that we begin to consider our next steps. The emotional wounds are still too fresh for us to have productive discussions about this right now. At this point, our top priority should be to resolve the custody issue. It is very important for children to have a mother in their lives. Here's my current position. I don't want to cause her any more pain. I just want to move on with my life. My priority is to minimize any suffering for my children. I sincerely hope that my wife can find her way to move forward as I have. The divorce proceedings are already underway, so there's no need to dwell on that unless she decides to contest it. I'm uncertain about her intentions at this point. As it stands, our lives are tangled up in one colossal, painful mess. We've learned that Greg has left the country. He's transferred back the money, at least the portion that rightfully belongs to his wife, so she's in a better financial position now. Surprisingly, Greg's own mother hired a private investigator to locate him. His mother was deeply concerned for him, but was also quite furious. But despite that, she's keeping tight-lipped about his whereabouts, only revealing that he's in another country. Greg has consented to an uncontested divorce, and it seems unlikely that he'll be returning anytime soon. Based on the information I've heard, it appears that one of the betrayed husbands may have issued threats to Greg on social media. However, it's essential to note that this is mostly based on hearsay and rumors at this point. In the meantime, we can work on co-parenting and find ways to maintain a respectful relationship. I'm far from a perfect husband or person. I have my flaws like everyone else. I will always remember that. Thank you for listening to the story to the end. It's Mernsy, and if you like it, please support us with a like as well as subscribe to our channel. Write in the comments what you think about the story.